And also just remember to like, subscribe, depending on which channel you're listening or watching this from, follow us. It's so,
I
so important
will.
because, yeah, because it's so, 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 um, for all our listeners around the world, make sure, the algorithms, let me talk to you, everyone here. The algorithm loves engagement. So
Yes.
keep engaged with us. Okay, so excellent. So welcome to the Business and Wealth Show again. Today I've got Natalie Doyle Oldfield, right? Such a prestigious name for a prestigious person. So
Thank you.
Natalie is the author of Trusted, the proven path to customer loyalty and business growth. Listen carefully. Customer loyalty and business growth. If you're listening here and you're thinking of starting your business or you're trying to grow your business, this subject of trust is so, 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 so important. So, Natalie, welcome, welcome, welcome. Tell us a little bit about what you do.
Thanks for having me, Mac. It's great to be here. Well, how should I tell you what I do? Well, imagine if you're a technology company, Mac, and you have leads coming in that aren't turning into sales, and you have a talented team with great products, yet your sales are a little bit flat, and maybe you have a few customer complaints, and some of your largest customers are leaving and
Mm.
going to the competition. They're not complaining, they're just leaving. These are all what I would call signals of low customer trust. These
Interesting.
are business issues that come up. So, what I do is I work with business owners and leaders to help them grow their companies and retain their customers by building relationships of trust. Trust is the biggest barrier we have. And a lot of times, companies don't realize that they have a trust issue. They're throwing spaghetti at the wall,
Mm.
thinking, well, we better do some more sales training or better marketing. But oftentimes, the underlying factor is a trust issue that's holding a company back. So I work with companies to research and just to figure out what their customers think and
Mm.
what their customer sentiment is, what their customer trust equity score is. That's a term that I coined, Mac, that really quantifies the level of trust a customer has in a company. And once we find that out, we then put strategies in place to deal with these trust issues. And oftentimes it's in the form of professional development, because at
Okay.
the end of the day, trust is about a relationship between people,
Yeah.
and people can learn how to build and manage relationships of trust.
So the kind of work you've been doing but applies to large corporations as well as small businesses. Is that right?
Absolutely. I have clients that have less, 10 or less, 10, 9 employees,
Right.
as well as clients that have thousands of employees.
Right, right. Got it. So tell us why. So you've been named for 5 years consecutively
Yeah.
as one of the world's top thought leaders in this area, this arena of trust, right? Trust across, so that is fact, that's significant for 5 consecutive years. That means you know something. That means you're doing something right. And because you are among some of the dignitaries, such as the CEO of Starbucks, Stephen Covey, who wrote the book, so this is amazing. What got you involved in this particular subject? Why did you want to really master this and teach that across the world?
I was working full time as a chief marketing officer for a software company. And
Mm.
this is years ago. And the market crashed in 2008. And I had never done sales before, but I was now responsible for sales. And I had to figure out, Mac, how do we succeed? How do we grow the company? And at the same time, I've always been curious about business and about customers and trying to figure out like what makes people tick and why is it that and how is it that customers decide to buy?
Yeah.
And I got so interested in these questions and why are some companies successful and others aren't, that I went back to school, to graduate school, to do my master's. So at the same time, I was working with this organization and trying to improve the sales because the market crashed.
Oh,
And I didn't know what to do. So, I looked around, asked if, all the people that I thought were really successful in sales, how do you do this? And because I really didn't know, and I really don't believe any of us want to be sold to. I believe we all decide and make a choice of where we want to buy, who we want to work with. And we intuitively, I knew that people buy from people they know, like, and trust, but I just really wanted to find out, like, how do you do this? So, in the middle of this financial crisis, the company I was working with, we, like many companies around the world, had a number of customers that pulled back and sales dipped.
oh
And
wow.
I was like, oh my gosh, I just took this role on and now I want us to be successful. And this all happened. I couldn't predict the financial crisis, which was the worst one in 100 years. And so, like I said, I asked people, how do you do this? And the people that I asked all said something similar. And that was really focus on the customer, do everything you can to help them. And like I said, at the same time, I decided to go back to university and do
Mm.
my graduate research to figure out and answer the question, how is it that some companies are successful and others not? And what I found out was amazing. What I found out was that the one thing that differentiates a company that's successful or not successful is customer trust. It's
Okay.
the it is the factor.
Mm.
And what I learned is that it impacts everything.
So let me ask you this. What if you could define trust and what trust is, especially from a business context, and you could put it in one sentence, what would that be?
Everything I do is in a business context.
Right.
So I love that you asked that. Trust is a faith or belief that someone or a company is going to do the right thing. It's
Mm.
a future looking state, right? And so,
Right.
which is why trust is so important because it's about continuing to buy products and services. It's about loyalty. It's about growth. It's about referrals. It's about retaining. It's
Yeah.
a future looking state. And so that is what I found out. And it was incredible because once I found that out, I realized, okay, well, in business, again, to your point, in with the business lens on, I knew my whole career, what gets measured gets managed.
Right. Okay.
And my whole career, I worked with folks that would say, okay, what's the return on investment? How are we going to measure this? How are we going to make this a key performance indicator? So when I learned that trust is the factor that differentiates a successful company from a non-successful company, I went about doing primary research to not only define trust, but to really understand how is it that we decide to trust. And I created a proprietary framework and the 8 principles of trust so that people have a step-by-step system to follow. And it's all evidence-based,
So let me
created.
ask you then, Natalie, very good stuff. What are the 8 steps then? Could you briefly highlight that for us? What are the 8 steps in terms of trust? Because if I'm listening in and I'm a small business owner and
Yes,
what you're saying makes sense. Okay, if there is more trust in me as a salesperson or as a business owner, if there's more trust in the organization, then
yes,
people refer us, people buy from us, they know we're going to take care of them. So, what are
yes.
the 8 steps or building blocks of that?
Well, to back up behind the 8 steps, really the model is about how we communicate, how we behave, and how we serve. So,
Mm.
what I would suggest for your listeners is to think about that. How is it that you communicate? How do you behave? And how you serve? And in my book, Trusted, The Proven Path to Customer Loyalty and Business Growth, I actually have a diagram of a triangle. So a
Okay.
triangle, as we know, has three sides.
Yeah.
Behavior is at the base of the triangle. And then it's about how you communicate and how you serve. And
Mm.
from this come the eight principles of trust. And actually, my whole book has each principle is a chapter in
Oh,
the book.
perfect.
Yeah.
Perfect.
So it's really about focusing on communication that is sincere, it's authentic, it's consistent, behavior that is acting in the best interest of customers,
Uh-huh.
stakeholders, and the public, and acting with integrity and doing the right thing. And then service that is committed to the long term, that's consistent, again, is sincere and empathetic.
Excellent. Service. So the eight steps, all in your book, all covered under chapters. So I presume you go in depth, much more detail as people go through the book, right?
Of course, of course. So, principle number one, which is chapter number one, is listen carefully with empathy and compassion, question and involve the other person in a conversation or a decision that affects them.
Wow. Okay.
And an example of that, if you're a business owner and you're wondering, okay, well, I do that.
Mm.
How do you operationalize it? Well, I'll tell you a little bit about a transformation one of my clients had. So I was working with a company, and they were challenged because one of their long-term customers complained about someone in their company. They said, "Do you know what? If we cannot get this person off this account, we're going to have to leave and go to another company."
Mm.
And it was a cybersecurity company. And the person that they were referring to is a guy whose name, I'll just call him Bob for anonymity's sake. Very talented, astute, technical person. And he was shocked when he found out that customers were complaining about his cavalier attitude.
Oh, wow.
And it was affecting sales though. So, like I said, their largest account said, "We're going to leave." So they said, "Okay, we need to fix this." And so, what they were complaining about, the cavalier attitude and, quote, the lack of communication skills. Well, so the manager, who I knew through someone else, called me and said, "Okay, we are experiencing an issue because he doesn't have soft skills. And because of it, we're going to lose an account." So fast forward, he participated, they enrolled him and he participated in what I call the Trust Mastery Program. So he, along with some of his other customer facing peers, and we focused on with him quite significantly the skill set of listening. See, a lot of people are not self-aware, Mac. He was shocked to
Mm.
learn that someone would complain. And the
Wow.
company actually invested a lot of money in him for technical training. Yet on the communication and the trust building side, they didn't call it that, but the relationship and account management side,
Uh-huh.
not as much. And he wasn't responsible for business development or account management. He was a technical lead. So when a network was down, he would be the one to fix it. Fast forward, he went through the Trust Mastery program. We learned that it really was listening that he wasn't strong on. So he became a better listener. And the light bulb came on for him and he completely transformed Mac, because what happened is he realized he wasn't even really thinking about the customer from the customer
Oh.
point of view. He's thinking about the customer as a ticket.
Okay. That is different.
That is different. And we as people are not ticket numbers.
No.
Anyhow, fast forward, he had a transformation. He completely changed. And then what happened was the client came back to the company and said, look, we want to talk to you about a longer term contract and managed services.
Mm.
And several months later, they received a 3-year, multi-million dollar contract
Wow.
because Bob had actually learned so much about this client that he started making suggestions about other services the company could offer.
Right.
He not only had an epiphany about being empathetic and how to respond with empathy and be a better listener, he became what I would call sales sensitive. And that's a big thing, Mac. A lot of technical folks and people who are in customer facing roles or front lines, they just don't think about a customer in terms of how they can help.
Right.
And because they're not aligned with what they do and what it does for the customer.
Right. That makes sense. They just want to sell and move on. So yeah, I get it.
Or
So
service and move on in
service.
his case.
Yeah, service and move on. So you've given us number one. Can we quickly run through the other seven?
Yeah, so the next one is communicate using clear,
Communicate.
concrete language.
Okay, that's important. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
Concrete
yeah,
language. Okay. Because some
yeah.
people, I suppose from there, it means that some people think they're communicating, but if the other person hasn't really understood it and it's not clear, then maybe it'll be the wrong action they take on no action at all.
Right. And as we know, you know, everything we do communicates a message,
Definitely.
right?
Definitely.
Everything from, our paralinguistic cues to our background, to the clothes we wear, to our facial expressions.
Absolutely.
And, that's a whole other area that we dive deep into. And a lot of us have have no idea how we're communicating and the way it's affecting other people.
Yeah.
And, you know, one thing that I find amazing is for every company that I work with that has either they want to improve sales or keep their competitive advantage or move into a new market or, as we talked about, have more loyalty, it all comes down to the people.
Yeah.
And on the communication side, a lot of us don't really realize how the way we communicate is impacting others, whether it's, using a lot of hand gestures, which as you can
Mhm.
see, I do,
I do
or,
too. Yeah.
you know, or, the fact if their camera is on or off. So um, it's a huge impact, um, of how we communicate. The
Fantastic.
next principle is listening carefully with empathy and,
Mm,
or excuse me, being honest and transparent.
mm,
And, nothing builds trust like the truth.
right. Yeah.
And there are strategies that companies can make and people can make to show how honest and transparent they are. Then it's around being consistent, predictable, and reliable,
Okay.
acting in the best interest of others, doing the right thing. When we do the right thing, that enshows our integrity and our ethics, and delivering on our promise. And then principle number 8 is committing to the long term.
Wow. Yes. Yeah. I can see what you've done there. Very, very, very clever. Because not only are we tapping into the psychology of human behavior, but by utilizing that, you're building rapport, you're building more trust, you're keeping the door open for people to be able to continue transacting with you. I love it. Good job. Well, a big round of applause for your book, by the way. Big round of
Thank
applause.
you very
Well done.
much. Thank you so
Listen,
much.
you are most welcome. You are most welcome. So the you talked about measurement earlier
Yes.
on, right at the beginning of our session. You talk about measuring what is measured can be improved. So for a small business owner, for an entrepreneur, what are the measurements that say actually you're losing right now, or you are not garnering as much as you can through sales, or otherwise, or you're losing customers? What are the numbers they should be looking at?
Well, I'm a bit biased. I believe that organizations should be measuring their trust equity score. Okay. So that is how much trust a customer has in them. I would say that first. And that is the tool that I mentioned before we got on that I created to measure true client sentiment
Okay.
and quantify trust equity. That term that the most precious asset a company has, I believe, is trust equity.
Okay.
Other things that, and I have, lots of clients that measure their trust equity. If you're not a big firm and you don't want to, or you're not able to survey your clients, let's say you don't have a lot of clients yet, I would still want to ask them, what is their experience like? So
Mm.
I really believe we should all be asking our clients on a regular basis, what is your experience? How can I improve? So I would measure trust equity, customer experience. I would also measure things like the number of referrals. So I would look at revenue, number of customer complaints,
Yeah.
how long customers stay with you. So, that could be measured into years with you, or a lot of companies look at churn rate. All of these are key performance indicators, and they all come back to trust.
Wow.
So
Wow.
the model that I built is evidence-based. It's based on the scientific method. And what I found, those 8 principles of trust that I mentioned to you, they are at the heart of how we decide to trust. They
Mm.
were created using the scientific method and tested out. One thing I will share is that what I found in my research is that your trust equity score, a company's trust equity score, has a positive correlation to the company's repeat business, the revenue, the propensity for someone to continue to buy, and satisfaction. So it's really important to be focused on what is the relationship? How can we continue to build a relationship with clients? Because it affects the bottom line and it affects the top line.
Got it. Got it. Excellent. Listen, for those who want to learn more from you, Natalie, what is the best, or get your book? What's the best way to connect with you or get your book, or really learn more about this?
The best way is to connect with me on LinkedIn. You can find me there at Natalie Doyle Oldfield. You can find my book, Trusted: The Proven Path to Customer Loyalty and Business Growth, on Amazon. Wherever you are in the world, either amazon.uk or .com, .ca, .au, wherever you are, you can find my book there.
Mm.
And you can also find me on my website, which is www.successtroughtrust.com. And I will say that on my website, there are some tools that you can download to actually assess your customer readiness and assess your team. And there's also a place where you can sign up for regular articles, newsletter, and tips as well.
Fantastic. Excellent. Well, that's super, 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 super good to know. So I'm just gonna say this for those of you who are listening in, remember to leave some comments to tell us what you got out of this. What is the meaning of trust for you? Share your comments, and also, as I said earlier on, subscribe, follow, give us an emoji, a thumbs up, and
Yes.
whatever you need to do, because the algorithm loves engagement. And I'm going to go back to Natalie now to say, hey, Natalie, We
Yes.
don't know how you can get hold of you, and my team will put the details on the footnotes of this particular show. The Is there any question I could have asked you or should have asked you around trust that I haven't asked you, but it's important for our listeners to know about?
Well, that's a good question. Maybe about one of the biggest myths. So, Mac, a lot of people believe that you can break trust instantly.
Mm,
And that's kind of a myth. So, the fact is, we can all be building trust equity. So, you as a business owner, if you are focused on continually and intentionally building a relationship of trust, when and if you have a problem, yes, you may fracture the relationship a little bit, but you have trust equity built up. So you have a cushion and it's not going to be broken so quickly. That's
mm,
one thing. And the other thing that I would say is that it's really important for everyone to remember that companies are made up of people.
mm.
And when we're building trust with a customer, you are actually building trust with another person. And for every company, every person, the biggest risk factor for any company is the people on the front lines, because it's the people who are being assessed on their trustworthiness.
Yeah.
Are they communicating, behaving, and serving in a trustworthy way? It all comes back to the people.
Absolutely. I love that. Listen, thank you so, so much, Natalie, for jumping on, give us so much of your wisdom around the element of trust that most business owners, entrepreneurs, frankly, do not think about until it's too late. So I love your principles. I love your trust equity score that you do. It all sounds fascinating. I'll have to get a copy of your book. So fantastic. Good luck with everything. And thank you for jumping on. I really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.
You are most welcome, Natalie. For all our listeners here, thank you again for being here. Really appreciate you as well. Keep moving forward, keep building your business for wealth. Take on the words that Natalie has spoken here and utilize that to see how you can grow your business as well. Bye for now.